All right, I'd like to introduce our panel here.
Yeah.
To my right, or to my left, actually, is William Bao Bean. He is an investment partner with SOS Ventures and a managing director of China Accelerator. Next to him is MacLaughlin, co-founder of Brink.io. And then Benjamin Chiu, attorney at Cooley. And Rui Ma, a partner Greater China, 500 startups.
Disagree with you.
And Alan Chan, managing director of Vector Ventures. And finally, Talk Low, director of Techstars. So, okay. Who wants to hear the panelists? Yay, who wants to hear the panelists? Thank you. Let's welcome them. Great. So I just want to go down the line and get everyone's views on Hong Kong as a startup city and how you think it's shaping up, particularly in comparison to Beijing and Shanghai and other cities, Singapore. William, what do you think? You've got a lot of experience investing in the region, and what do you think from your viewpoint?
Sure. So just quickly, I don't actually spend a lot of time in Hong Kong recently. But for China Accelerator, we had a couple of teams from last batch from Hong Kong, and then I help run AngelVest, which is the largest angel group in China, and we've done maybe 7 or 8 deals here. So I'd say it's improving.
Yeah. It's improving, okay.
Very
All
diplomatic.
Right. Partly because you're doing some investing here, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. We'll come back to you. And Bay, what about from your perspective?
So I'm probably the newest of the block. I've only been here about 14 months, but I was in San Francisco for a little over 8 years. So I have only a little experience, but I can tell you I'm very excited. I think in just the last 13, 14 months, I've been incredibly impressed by the volume of startups that are gaining traction out of Hong Kong. The talent pool has been incredibly impressive. I did not expect how deep the engineering talent. I invest in IoT, and it's been incredibly impressive from that point of view as well. And also all the investors that have actually started taking this into consideration, showing up, putting down roots, doing deals. So I always tell everyone that if they're somewhere else in the world and they're not looking at Hong Kong and Asia, that they're actually in the wrong place.
And Ben, you're spending more time in Hong Kong these days too, right? Doing deals?
Well, we're just lawyers. We help investors and entrepreneurs sign prenuptial agreements. So what I know. But I think here in Hong Kong, the strength of Hong Kong is infrastructure, very flexible legal and workforce, and it's close to Shenzhen. And there are a number of companies here that leverage being close to the center of hardware innovation around Shenzhen and Guangdong area. We also know that we actually have quite a few, very exciting high growth startup companies here in Hong Kong. So we are very positive. It's a great place. Still a smaller market in terms of venture financing compared to Beijing, even Shanghai, but it's definitely coming up.
Okay. For us, we have actually 3 portfolio companies in Hong Kong, and I come here every month or so. I have to say, actually, I agree with Bay that in the past year and a half, I've seen great ramp up in the quality of startups, as well as the participants in the ecosystem, including capital as well as community. I was just at the startup weekend at Blueprint, which is a new accelerator and co-working space in Quarry Bay, and I was incredibly impressed with the quality of the teams and the projects and the presentations. And I think Hong Kong actually has a lot of talent. There just needs to be a little bit of a cultural shift for it to be okay or accepted or encouraged for people to do startups.
Yeah, I have to agree with everyone before. Being born and raised and everything, I think it's really improved a lot over the past year and a half. Teams are really starting to, I think they're the cultural thing, they're getting more focused now. So when people come up with plans and businesses, a lot of times, I think the business angle and the real part of how you're going to entice investors to come in is really they're maturing, I think, and it's good. So for us, it's more encouraging for us to look at new companies, and hopefully it's like a positive cycle for everybody.
So, Bay, I'm actually the newest person here. I actually don't live in Hong Kong. I'm passing through. So I live in London, work with tech stars in London. I'm actually originally from Hong Kong, but I'm just here on personal reasons. So, Ray, I'm not going to encroach on your territory by tonight. I'm leaving on a plane. So I would say I disagree with William. I say that it's improving, but I think there's still a lot of elements. So I've worked in New York, worked in London. So New York was a pretty mature ecosystem. London is definitely, maturing. And I definitely will say that Hong Kong's nowhere near that. There's a lot of elements that I think that needs improvement. In terms of the capital base, in terms of kind of the real kind of tech mentorship. But that's not to say it can't improve and it can't get any better, but I don't think it's anywhere near where it should be.
I'm going to make it really hard for you to disagree with me every time. Because when I said improving, I didn't actually say it was good or bad.
Just ping pong back and forth.
Yeah, it was kind of a nebulous word, right? Sort of like interesting. So a lot of you talked about the cultural aspects. Can Hong Kong get that kind of cultural, entrepreneurial culture that seems so prevalent in places in Beijing and Shanghai and Silicon Valley? Can Hong Kong get that?
I'll go first to defend my home. I don't think it's can we get it. Hong Kong was built on it. So it's a matter of, I think, generations, right? You do it, you make it, people get comfortable, Hong Kong is comfortable, so you don't take risks. But I think, as more people are getting into the space and there's more good examples, and even from China, right, the successes are overflowing into Hong Kong. And I think, it's very hard for someone to be brilliant and jump into a startup versus getting a job from X bank and not go home, and if your parents are going to destroy you because you take a startup job. It's very practical, right? But I think, to defend Hong Kong, it's already there. It's just bubbling back up again.
But not necessarily in technology, right?
Well, in these examples, right, you have people that do well, then you have heroes, and you have more companies getting funding, making money, changing industries, then people realize, okay, this is not like video games. This is like a real thing. So it takes time, right? We're not like London and New York yet, but I think in Hong Kong we learn and perform faster, so we'll catch up.
I just want to quickly add that the Hong Kong's business model as a city before the Opium War was actually sea piracy. Stanley Chizhu in Chinese was actually where they punished the sea pirates. So Hong Kong just needs to go back to its roots.
Thanks, man.
Microphone drop.
Yeah,
Out.
Thanks.
Out.
Yeah, but to those points, right? So I think it's worth looking at history, and Hong Kong was created after the Opium War. It's a city of immigrants, right? Of people trying to flee mainland China and communists and coming to create a better life here. And I think that's what startups, in my mind, the better startup ecosystems are built on new people, new immigrants. And in London as well, I think 45% of the startups that have raised come from immigrants, right? Are started by immigrants. So we're only one generation away. So my grandfather was, real estate fund, and I think many people's grandparents were immigrants and entrepreneurs. I think our father's generations, our parents' generations, are the first ones that actually had stable jobs. So the knowledge is there, the knowledge is there, the courage is there, the stories are there, but we just haven't heard of the tech stories, right? So, and the greatest hero of Hong Kong, Li Ka-shing, is an entrepreneur. We have those stories, right? So I think it's we're not that far. We're not that far from a tech success. I mean, the roots are here.
One of the big things that I like to harp on is around the mentorship, like you said. And I think that one of the biggest things we can do as a community is have those last generations, even if it's not just from the pure tech side. A lot of this stuff is available online. A lot of us fly through. So it's not that it's not available. I think it's more of that mentorship and letting them be vulnerable, telling them about the failures, helping them actually dig through the crap that it is to be an entrepreneur, and especially in a space like technology where it changes so quickly. You can't rely on these older classical ways of doing business anymore. So I would love, and I've asked a lot of the kind of last generation entrepreneurs, even if it's hospitality, finance, real estate, to come in and talk to our startups and say, can you just be vulnerable? Can you really talk about the times that you didn't know what you were doing, that you had to deal with your parents and all the cultural things that, in the States, we don't have to deal with that. And I think to me, that's kind of my next big push, is trying to find the local mentors and not have to fly them in and have all the outside talent do that, because I think we do have it here. But maybe, people like both of you guys that grew up here could help us figure that out. I think that's a huge part, is inciting them to come out and support the young tech entrepreneurs, because it's not just about the tech part. A huge part has to do with just being an entrepreneur.
Does this mean I don't have to fly you up to Shanghai anymore to mentor China Accelerator?
Well, you can keep doing that, but it's a lot of damn work, so no.
So are you seeing some of these real estate titans and family offices putting more money into startups here?
And again.
Well, I'm trying to get them to. So actually,
You're raising a new fund, right?
I can't talk about that, but
I think so.
but actually, if you think about it, a lot of traditional enterprises, there are a lot of opportunities, especially real estate, right? Like whether in retail, commercial, or even residential, homes are becoming a lot smarter. So I can tell you there have definitely been real estate, either developers or operators, that have come to us and said, hey, we want to take a look at your startups. We want to understand how the next generation of technology is going to affect how we differentiate ourselves from our competitors. So it's most obvious in more traditional, well, not more traditional, but like industries that are extremely obviously impacted, like telecom or traditional media. But I would say real estate is definitely one of them up there, where they're considering how to get involved, right? Whether or not that's in the form of directly investing or just sort of looking on how to partner and collaborate with startups, I think many people are starting to take the first step.
So for AngelVest, not for China Accelerator, but for AngelVest, we have a tradition of trying to teach each other. And for Hong Kong, there's been a lot of teaching on like how to be an angel, how not to be an asshole. When you're a banker all day, and then you at night go to hang out with entrepreneurs, and you have to put on your nice hat, your helpful hat. And so it's been a gradual process over the 2 years we've been here. I think we're getting some companies that are improving, but the biggest thing is, turning a banker into a nurturing angel. Is
not possible.
Is a process. No, it's possible, but it's a process.
So for us,
He used to be a banker himself.
I was a banker too. But,
All three of us.
Hey, I was a banker too.
Oh, you did. We've got a couple of ex-bakers up here.
but I wouldn't call us nice or nurturing. But no, anyways. So I think for us, like we work with a lot of traditional investors, families, and corporates, and I think the second generation helps. To be familiar with what we're looking at, what we're doing, and secondly, I think a big shift will require. We were just talking about this. About you either have trust to begin with, either through previous relationships or through track record with relationship, or you have a big enough brand where I think it's still a matter of trust, but more like indirect. And they believe if they give Rui or Tak money, and like next week they're not going to call them and they're like vanish off the face of the earth and they've ran off, right? So I think trust and building a steady relationship with the last generation and older corporates. Well, more traditional corporates and families is very important. It's just asset allocation at the end of the day, right?
I think it's actually really critical what Alan's working on, because when we first started hanging out, this is one of my biggest frustrations, is that I need to run around and find faster money for the investments or the teams as they grow, or go back to the Valley. And that's not sustainable. And I think Alan's done some fantastic work. He's definitely educated our group on how do you work and how do you even think about approaching that. Because coming from the outside, especially San Francisco, I'm sure Ray, you've learned a lot more than I have. But I haven't been at it that long, but I can tell you it's incredibly frustrating. It is really difficult, and I think that is some unbelievable untapped potential that we have here. I'm definitely not the one to solve it. We'll piggyback on the shoulders of giants over here, figure it out. But I think that's a kind of sleeping giant that we have in Hong Kong, that once that tips, I feel like it's going to become a mega powerhouse that no one's actually paid attention to.
Is there?
I'm going to add something to this
Yeah.
point. I'm not going to disagree with him. I'm an ex-banker. My family's been all ex-bankers, so thank you very much. We're nice people too. I'm hurt. I really don't know the current state of of converting kind of family cash and family assets and real estate assets into kind of startup cash. But from what I've seen in the last 2 weeks, I kind of feel, I don't know that current state, but I feel Hong Kong kind of needs a new kind of industry. So I don't know the status quo, but it needs it. And if I look at traditional real estate industries, if I take a look at the entertainment industry here in Hong Kong, it's not sustainable. And so for Hong Kong to chart, it does pay me a bit, because I am Cantonese. If for Hong Kong to pave its way in the future, it needs to find something. And so it needs to find startup capital. It needs to lead in something. And so if it doesn't lead in this, we need to make our own destiny. That's the way I see it.
What are some of the sectors that you think Hong Kong could take a lead in? Is fintech one of those areas?
When I was at Singtel Innovate until 6 months ago, I did a Hong Kong company called Demist. There's their Series A. And so they're a data company, and they source all the data about all of you. So your telco, your phone data, your social data, your bank data, everything.
Not creepy at all.
No, not at all. And then they analyze you and determine what your credit rating might be. Probably not the people in this room, because you have bank accounts and things like that, but it's very useful for the people at the fringes of society in a developed market, or anyone in a developing market where there is no structured data, there's only unstructured data. So you've got a lot of banker folks here, you've got a lot of data folks here, and that was my first Hong Kong deal with Innovate. And then since then, we're doing, I think launch pilots, of course, but I'm not responsible for that.
And that company,
but then a couple more back end. There's more hardcore tech. There's a reserve of tech talent here, especially as the Chinese tech talent gets increasingly expensive. I mean, when you've got 20 odd billion in VC going into the market. Taiwan tech talent is cheaper than Chinese, so I don't know where Hong Kong sits, but that's untapped resource.
Right, the company he just mentioned, Demist Data, is kind of a typical Hong Kong startup success story. They started here, initially grew in Hong Kong, quickly became, based on its business model, became a global company. I think the top management team is both here and in New York City. Right. I know them well because they're one of our clients. So we like to see more companies like that. It seems like there are more, these kind of companies coming out every day. And I think the top team, like people mentioned, are typical immigrants. They are from Australia and New Zealand, not really local people, but I'm sure there are a lot of local people on their team. But that's a typical Hong Kong startup.
It was a co-lead, so I'm doing China, and the other VC's in London, which makes board meetings a pain, but it's a global business.
I'll just speak for what we do. From the IoT space, no-brainer. I really do think that Hong Kong has the ability to be the Silicon Valley for IoT. I'm not making that up like you can just copy and paste that name somewhere, but I actually think it's possible. I think the talent is not just engineers coming out of HKUST or HKU or wherever. It's actually the multiple generations of manufacturing intelligence the trade, logistics, trade financing, IP here, the ability to quickly get up and run your company. It's tax, obviously. I really think we have a chance to be the best in the world for IoT with Shenzhen obviously so close across the border. And I'm not going to go anywhere until we figure it out because I really think this is the place to do it.
Sounds like a real commitment. Anyone else on the sector question?
I'll take a stab first. Pretty talkative.
London.
Yeah. I generally, again, there's 2 weeks data points. I think there's a plethora of choices. I think that's the thing, right? So if you segment from a market perspective, you've got China on one side, you've got Southeast Asia, you've got the U.S., and then to the point of kind of immigrants, right? There's so many immigrants. So right, it could be an American guy or girl coming over here, starting a business, and then going back to the U.S., right? Equally, you could have a mainland Chinese guy come over here, start a business, and go address that market. So from that perspective, I think equally there's so many choices. I think from a natural talent, human resource perspective, there's definitely a lot of fintech, so there's more alignment to that. But equally, there's a lot of talent in Shenzhen for IoT stuff, right? So I don't know, if just from a couple of just different ways of looking at it, I think there's a lot of choices. I can't really nail any particular segment in my mind.
I was going to say logistics. It's not sexy. Yeah. Logistics and trade. I've seen some of the coolest companies that I've never have expected at the demo days and the investment panels. Just unreal traction, and you never would have heard of these guys. And they're dealing with some of the biggest ports on the earth. So I mean, you probably know more.
Yeah, I was actually going to say logistics as well. I mean, for every city, I mean, if you make it simple, you just sort of stick it onto what we're strong with traditionally. But I really think, I mean, I don't think there should be a barrier to what sector it is. I mean, logistics, finance, retail, some of the companies we know, digital media, I mean, these are things that have always been strong around here, and it's just waiting for the next wave. And so, logistics company makes a lot of sense in Hong Kong, right? Like, what other port versus ours touches more countries every single day than ours? There's probably like 1, 2 maybe that does more. So I think, not that we're only going to be successful in certain things, but of course like IoT and fintech and logistics, we should naturally have an advantage because that's physically here. So.
Okay, don't have to cross the border for that. So Jack Ma recently set up a fund for Hong Kong startups. Do you think that's going to make a dent in the shortage of capital for Hong Kong-based startups?
Shortage of capital in Hong Kong?
Well, we just hope they don't make everything too expensive.
Oh, I see. In terms of valuations?
Yeah. I mean, you've got guys and like hedge funds chasing down already, making the world dangerous for all of us. I mean, I don't know. It's a dangerous game to begin with, right? So.
What did you make of that new fund?
I didn't even know they did it. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I know they got chased out of Taiwan, but not here.
Is this also a nonprofit like the one in Taiwan?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's structurally very similar to the one in Taiwan.
okay.
From what I
It's supposed
heard.
to be a nonprofit.
I thought the Taiwanese government kicked them out.
I didn't know.
Okay, whatever.
Is anyone from Alibaba here?
I actually think that it won't make or break anything because good businesses don't, especially like if they're a rational investor and aren't like throwing like millions of dollars at random projects. I actually think that just one fund is really not going to make a difference, and it's really up to, like we were saying earlier, the collective financing ecosystem here to get started. And I actually find a lot of people are able to raise the initial seed funding. There are like us on the panel, a lot of ex-bankers with substantial savings, and also their banker friends willing to put in like 100K here or there. And what's really missing, as Bei said earlier, is probably more sort of experience mentorship from entrepreneurs. And I think just a local ecosystem of champions and heroes. That's probably more important, like value-added dollars. Not to say that like banker dollars are not cool. That's totally cool, especially if it's our portfolio company. Please feel free to invest. But I think it would be great to see more. Investment dollars from people who are more operational. So if Alibaba comes in and invests, I think it's a total plus for the ecosystem. But yeah, I haven't actually run into them or anything.
I mean, it's very encouraging, right? But having more money there doesn't make companies better. It doesn't make people smarter. And, it doesn't. So I think, if anything, I think it's a double-edged sword. It's very encouraging. But on the other hand, free money supporting a lot of, it's good to support entrepreneurs, but if it's investing, like, Rui is saying, in like a mindless, supportive, semi, philanthropic way, it's not good for, the stability of the ecosystem, right? You don't want people just to be writing checks and have companies go, hey, we had a grant or we had an investment from this, so that's why we're valued at this, because they were willing to sign the check. It's good and bad, encouraging but dangerous, I think.
So I'm going to take another spin on that one. I think it's a double-edged sword. In London, so the government's, London encourages, angels. So essentially, in London, the EIS-SES scheme allows a 40% tax break on angel investment. So what that has done is created essentially kind of an early-stage bubble. So you see a lot of investors coming in, friends and family coming in, and they're essentially investing because of the tax break. Yes, there is a negative. So yes, it basically pushes everything up, but. And you could argue that that's a bad thing. But I think and this is what kind of, I don't know Jack Ma's money, what it's going to be used for. So maybe it has those type of effects. But I think also there's a net positive, and I think there's a net positive PR, right? Going back full circle to that cultural change, right? There's also a net positive in terms of that PR cultural change, where, Asian parents would say, hey, Jack Ma's putting money in. Why not give it a go? And that could spur more. I don't know whether that will happen, but I think it could. And I think that's just a slow, positive movement towards entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship as a career.
I think we'll see equalization. We also had Horizon announce something recently as well. So there's new money in the market, especially at the lower end. My biggest question when Jack announced his fund was, how do people get access? It just seems like this fund that's now here, and the question is, how in the heck can a team actually approach them? How does it work? And then from the Horizon side, again, just so senior, so big, how can a team ever approach that? And I think even if they do start deploying potentially irrationally, I assume they won't, but if they do, I think we'll see the equalization come by more startups just joining again. I think one of the things I've learned from being here is all the work that's happening in Singapore and watching the effects of the multiple waves of investment that have hit Singapore, and then just more money follow, and then more money follow, and then the effect that has. So unless we see just constant new funds coming online at this size, I think we're probably okay. I would love to know, and if anyone does know, I'd love to know how the teams approach those new funds and actually apply for the money.
So the one issue we had in Southeast Asia is that there were no exits. So people were throwing money after stuff, but nobody was actually making any money. So the largest exit in Southeast Asia until Vicky was $25 million, which supports an angel investment, but doesn't support a VC investment.
Right. Is that same thing happening here in Hong Kong?
Well, no, I mean, but Hong Kong's kind of a small. This is all Southeast Asia, but are there exits
no
here?
exits.
Yeah, but well, I don't know. Are there exits here? Where are the
Divide
exits?
did $100 million exit, right?
Yeah. So those stories and how long did that exit take? So we're on a 10. Our fund, we're on a 10-year plan. So is your sources of money willing to be on a 10-year cycle? I mean, we have a massive IRR, but a lot of people, especially in China, don't care about IRR. They want their money back in 3 years.
Right. So the accelerators and the incubators that have been forming here in Hong Kong, are there too many of them, and now that makes it kind of difficult for the best ones to emerge? Is it too many, too much?
I definitely don't think so. I think that's something that
How many accelerators are there here now in Hong Kong?
So I think it depends on how you define an accelerator and incubator. I would love if everyone would start using a universal way, because I call them accelerators. They're all the same thing everywhere in the world now. I think co-working has been the biggest proliferation here, and that I think is sort of it's not unfortunate, it's a good thing, but it's really a real estate play in Hong Kong. And I think that's the part that I don't really understand, is having co-working spaces by definition does not mean you get culture. It does not mean you have your brains overlapping and better companies coming out. So I think it's a positive leading indicator. But when you have, my biggest thing is whenever we talk with Invest Hong Kong is say, look, when you're in the 37th floor of Tower 76 in random MTR stop, ZXY, whatever, you can't do culture. It's not possible. You need to have a hub. You need to have a space. You need to bring all the external minds, all the financiers, everyone else in one place and create culture. That's how this works. And I think having more people working on this is fantastic. So I'm definitely more of a let them come in. We need the help for now. I definitely don't think we need to be pruning in the growing stages.
Hong Kong is really great on the infrastructure. I mean, the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, and here at Cyberport, this is wonderful infrastructure. So you would think that Hong Kong would have lots of great examples of budding startups that are promising to be the next Alibaba or whatever, but doesn't seem to be happening yet. Is it going to ever happen?
I just want to clarify that point. I know I'm in Cyberport. Actually, a lot of our teams work with the government funds and the grants, so they have their engineering offices in Science Park or Cyberport, and they co-locate in Central with us. So we use that talent pool where you can actually have more people working and better services there. That's an amazing system. The grant system in Hong Kong is highly underrated. It is unbelievable. It takes a little time to get the money and the grants, but it far surpasses any other city I've ever seen in terms of the actual available money, but it just takes a while to get it. So I think it's fantastic, but there still needs to be that sense of community, which coming from San Francisco, I mean, everyone that's been there in London and New York, there's a sense of that. And I think that's what I want to continue to help people here is like, how do we build that? And I think it generally happens in central locations like Sheungwan, Central, Sai Ying Pun, etc.
Yeah, I was going to say for accelerators, I'm actually not aware of very, very active equity giving accelerators in the sense that, us Techstars or YC run in the US and in London. I think there are a lot of co-working spaces and they're doing a very good job trying to foster a sense of community. But actually, maybe Techstars should open up a Hong Kong office,
Thanks for the invitation.
So I would love to see more accelerators actually in Hong Kong.
There's not that many. I agree with Ray. So we definitely might have the velocity of co-working spaces might be too fast. But we don't actually have that many accelerators, and the more the merrier. It's just even if they fail, you're educating classes of new entrepreneurs, and I mean, you 2, 3 should all open one just for Hong Kong.
So just to standardize the definition, I think it's important. I think incubators. So essentially, incubators are a real estate play, and it's just kind of co-working spaces. And then for the audience out there, accelerators have an additional kind of equity, cash, economics component to it that incubators usually don't. Incubators are usually just cash for space. So I just want to make that clear so that everybody knows, so that everyone speaks from the same definition.
We can use our definition, right? So it's a set period of time, generally.
Sure. Good point.
Mentors, not just the people working there. Money at the beginning, usually a demo day at the end. Am I missing anything? Everybody's generally in one room.
Yep.
Free beer.
And China
incubators have that
Accelerator is
too.
the first accelerator in Asia with a beer sponsor. Thank you, AB InBev. Yeah, we get Harbin wheat. So there's 4 accelerators in China, maybe 5 that I found, and there's 2,500 incubators. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. I don't think there is enough. And I think, I don't think there is enough. I mean, in London we have the reverse problem. We've got 45. How many incubator spaces here? 35, 40?
Co-working. That's
Co-working spaces, right? We've got 35, 40 accelerators in London alone. In London alone, right? And so, 1,000 flowers blooming. I think the more there are, the more people will say, hey, maybe I'm missing this startup shift, right? Maybe I should try a startup. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing.
I was going to say that, I haven't used that definition of incubators in the past. So that just goes to show you, and I've given many presentations on accelerators and incubators. I agree on the definition of accelerators, but I think actually, even in the early stage investment community, there's a lot of difference of opinion on what an incubator is. Yeah.
I will say that just like at Startup Weekend, this week at Blueprint, which Swire has this fantastic location. They do a B2B accelerator, but no equity. They actually give you a space for free. And when I heard that, I said, well, okay, that's amazing. And they have a corporate come in and say, not going to take equity, but to give you similar hands-on or fly you out from wherever you are. So when we judged for E27 on Monday, probably similar to you, Ray, I really, 14 months after being here, I had that moment thinking, holy crap, these guys have traction. These are some good companies. And I've been incredibly impressed just in, like I said, 12 to 14 months. And that's a place that doesn't necessarily take equity and do the standard model, but they have somehow cultivated in a very short, they've only been open 6 months maybe. And that, for me, that was the best out of the whole time I've been here, the best event I've seen so far. We actually have one of the winners in the audience right now.
Who's that? Oh, okay.
Best event aside from this one, obviously.
Oh, well, it's a different type of event. We are judging startups. So different, yeah.
I'm a Cyberport incubating.
Bam.
Go
All right.
Cyberport. Actually, Rebecca, you also fired a question. I just want to be able to answer that. So
Sure.
you said, do you think there can be an Alibaba here? And I don't know, but I don't think that's the right question. Because at the end of the day, right, we're so early. We're early. So this I'll put my early hat on. We don't know. And there's so many things that, a team has to have product market fit, and then there's team dynamics issues, and there's market issues and fundraising issues. Yeah, you got to get lucky. You got to get extremely lucky. I mean, I don't know what the odds are, but it's like 0.000 something percent. I think the real question is, are we giving all the support that's necessary for Alibaba to be even possible? I think that's the real question, and I hope that ecosystem and us coming together shows positive momentum to try to build that. Whether it becomes successful, we don't know.
Do you think there's a role for government support in this, or is government shouldn't be in the startup?
Is the government still here? Okay, so...
Go ahead, William. I think it's safe.
Okay.
In your pocket.
So when I was at SoftBank, and then even with Innovate, Singtel, I used to use, in the early days, any company that had government support was a huge major red flag, and I would steer clear. But that was a while ago, and things have changed. I think Singapore started out horrible and got better over time. Usually 1 year at a time, but 6-7 years later, their program doesn't suck that much. It's okay.
There's a lot of matching for funds from the Singaporean
it's matching
government.
instead of having 2 professors come visit you every Saturday morning and audit what you did for the week, which is where they started. So I think there's definitely a place, and I think when you have, Hong Kong, which I haven't been here in a long time or lived here in a while, but it's expensive. So how do you pay for food and rent when you're in a startup, when you're in Hong Kong? So some grants or set up a space maybe outside of Central or where things can be cheap and you can or out here. But where do people live? I mean, you got the Bel Air. I don't think anybody in a startup is going to be in Bel Air, right? So where do you live? Where do you eat?
There's a park outside.
There's a couple of tents. Occupy is taken.
Food truck, right?
So I will give a shout out. So when I first came here, I was very much hardwired by the Valley to say, government, stay away, head down, do your own thing, disrupt. don't partner. And Invest Hong Kong, for us at least, in our team, has been fantastic. I mean, huge shout out for the support. Obviously, it's super difficult to really push through a lot of the other parts of the government. I think that was one of the best things they did was invent that group. But there's still a lot of work to go, no question. They're doing a lot of work on visas right now, which is unbelievably helpful. Their grant system, I think it's just that it's not so well known. There is unbelievable access to huge amounts of money for the grant system. I think helping it just go faster is probably the best way. They already have it allocated. They're actually looking to loosen some of the different regulations around it too and reinvent it. So I think moving to Asia, I've had my eyes open that you have to think about the government. It's very hard to come over here and just put your head down and say, I'm not going to pay attention to what these various countries' governments are doing. You have to understand it. You have to pay attention. You have to be at least a part of the dialogue if you really want to be big or impact anything in these countries in Southeast Asia.
Okay, so I'll give you the counterpoint. So we have 4 Hong Kong companies in recent memory in China Accelerator. One came back. Another one recently moved from Hong Kong to Shanghai for our program, and then for some reason picked Bangkok. These guys they've taken their time to get to launch, so they're a little tight on cash, and it's difficult here. Anything you can do, like put your how-to list up on a wiki so we can all access it, because I'm pretty sure these guys did not apply, and anything that we can do to help them would be great.
I was going to say that for us, we actually work with multiple local governments. Myself personally work with the Taiwan government a lot. Some went with the Hong Kong government, hopefully more in the future. And I know my colleagues work with Korea, Middle East, Singapore, etc. So I think the best way for the government to get involved is to take advantage, right, of funds like us, right? Because we are deploying capital. That's our core expertise. If governments want to jumpstart the ecosystem, they should do whatever they're good at, which is policy and regulation, and then leave the actual deployment of capital to people whose our livelihoods depend on that. So I'm not totally sure just a grant matching system is the best way. I think the best way is with some of the other governments we've worked with where they funnel money into private institutions like us. Perhaps it can create some incentives, but actually let sort of capitalism take its course. And for us, because when we get LPs as government LPs in our fund, we actually are very much, even if it's not written into our agreement with the government, we become a lot more focused and interested in that ecosystem. That's sort of just given.
So, there's a system in China, and it's being used by a number of other governments where they will put money into a fund. And the idea is that the fund can operate as the fund operates, but a certain portion should be put into the geography, or the fund can operate however they want. But if the money goes into companies from that geography, then the economics get better for the fund. And so I think both work, but some of us are fundraising, so.
Definitely highly recommend some variation. Actually, the more hands-off you are, the better, the more likely you're to attract really quality fund managers, right? The more strings you have attached, the more likely you're going to attract people who are just there for all the wrong reasons, actually. So
I think they can do a lot to connect the dots. That's what I've seen, at least here. I don't know the other geographies, although I've traveled around actually with 500 with Dave to learn about the region, but I haven't. I've seen amazing connectivity come out of the government saying, this company's doing that, you should know this family, you should talk to this person. To us, that's been the best help. The grants and everything take time. The matching, the programs, all these larger scale policy things, but they know everybody. And they have the ability, if they spend that time, to connect. And that's at least the reception that we've had since coming here. But I think that that's something that we could do a lot more of too, is really tap into their network and the brain trust. The money and the policy stuff will eventually work itself out.
Yeah, totally agree. I think everyone, including startups, the government, should just focus on what they're good at. you should just do what you're good at, not what you want or think you want to be good at, and let people do their jobs. And like Invest HK, very good at connecting, like bringing people together, and maybe that's that, right? And then when you write grants, who are the people actually, voting yes or no for the grants? Are they entrepreneurs that have been in and battled themselves? Are they in academia? Are they in government? I mean, who are these people? And I think that really will drive like how grants are approved and how that all works as well. And so, I think the key, I think what everyone's saying is just everyone needs to focus at what they're good at and sort of let other people be better than you and like let people do what they do, right? Instead of we're big, so we'll just take over everything. I think that rarely works for anything.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you very much, Venture Capital Angel, Dealmaker panelists. Let's give them a round of applause, please. And in the tradition of Silicon Dragon, we got to get a photo op of all of us here. So just give us a moment before we end the program. Let's all stand together here.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Good stuff.
Thank you, audience, for staying and being so attentive. And thanks to our supporters again, Cooley, KPMG, the IT Festival, and Cyberport. And please stay for the dinner and the reception afterwards. There's a dinner and a reception right next door. Thanks again. And see you in Beijing next month, May 21st.